Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our combined Operation Freedom and Dave versus the MSM video series. We're doing this during the, pre-election and now post-election. And then we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled separate Dave versus the MSM and Operation Freedom briefing next week. Well, we're a week into it. Still standing? What I want to do today is I want to do a bit of a dissection of the 2024 election, something you'll never get in the bought-off lamestream fake media. And I want to focus on remember that movie, The Magnificent Seven? Okay. The Magnificent Seven events in the 2024 election. I want to start out, however, with a quote, one that I've related to you before, but it bears repeating, from Gary Barnett, political activist. Quote, "Concerning the state, there are no accidents, no coincidences, and no national emergencies or threats. All is planned." Once again, everything in politics and government is planned in advance, is not accidental, any coincidence natural or organic, and all is staged in one way or another to either affect a certain outcome or cover up another. Believe nothing in the mainstream, what some people still call the mainstream media, or from government. Trust nothing, question everything, and never accept any reports unless you can verify the real facts in order to find the truth. As I.F. Stone once said, all governments are run by liars, and nothing they say should be believed. End quote. Well, here we are. And frankly, let's preface this video with this statement. The deep state, the globalist syndicate, the globalist cult, the shadow government, the New World Order crowd, the criminal international banking syndicate, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, their plan, no matter who won, has and is the same. And that is to utilize their divide and conquer operation, which they have used for well over 100 years, to implement their ultimate operation. And their ultimate operation is to bring down the financial system, debt-based system of the world. Because out of that, they create the most casualties amongst us that they call, and they do, they call us the useless eaters. That we're utilizing resources that was only meant for them. No, this is how evil and sinister and psychopathic they are. Know your enemy. There's your enemy right there in a nutshell. But they plan on bringing down the financial system. And if you look at the debt, D-E-B-T, data, we're there. Now, what they're hoping is that you're not going to protect yourself and your family. That you will lock yourself down, continue to consume their bought-off lamestream fake media propaganda, and be willing victims of them, so that you ultimately run to them to save you, of which they have no intention of doing that. None. And frankly, they want you to forget about information that we've tried to pass on to you about, one, that this is coming, and two, how to protect yourself. And in a nutshell, your greatest insurance policy financially is physical gold and physical silver. It's been that way for thousands of years, and it's going to remain that way for thousands of years, like it or not. Protect yourself. course, having storable food and storable water and water filtration systems, that's a good thing too. The company I use is Numana for that. The company I use for precious metal, Numana, Numanna.com. And the company I use on the precious metal side, I believe the most honest company on the face of the earth, is Camino, Camino, CaminoCompany.com. But you also have to protect yourself by networking information to others. And the cult wants you to forget about these magnificent 7 events that occurred in this past election cycle, because they were prime time players in each and every one of these events. Now, here is where the cult underestimated the American public. They felt that they could be involved, manipulate these 7 magnificent 7 events from the 2024 election cycle and get away with it. That people would not become awakened, different than woke, awakened to what was really going on. So number 1 on the list of these magnificent 7 events, I'm sure you can call it yourself, is what happened on what's called J13, July 13th, 2024, Butler, Pennsylvania. It became obvious to even the most brain-dead of totalitarian zealots out here in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor that that event was not organic. That was a set up and stand down operation. That opened many people's eyes. That thought that all this talk about government involvement in many of these operations, whether it's with elections, votes magically appearing 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning or for days afterwards, or these contrived wars, or these assisted takedowns of financial systems and borders and the like. Even out here, Moscow on the Huron River, Ann Arbor, Michigan. The J13 event opened millions of people's eyes around the country about what we're dealing with this criminal syndicate that some people still call the government. Number 1 on the list, J13, and we can also put in S15, September 15th, of what happened on that golf course in Florida. Again, another set-up operation. This time not so much stand down, but set up. Just look at who the perp was, right? Who he really worked for. Became obvious. He was a recruiter for that wonderful, benevolent, caring organization, the CIA. Yeah, he was a recruiter in foreign soil. Yeah. Number 1 on the event, Magnificent 7, J13 in Butler, PA, S15 in Florida, West Palm Beach. Number 2, I'm lumping the pink mist events that were contrived, fabricated through the cult to take place, engineered as one event. Number 2 on the event is 8 days later after J13, J21, that July 21, that would be when Joe Biden was thrown under the bus. Folks and I can't go into it on a public platform, okay? But on our subscription site, I do a show called The WTF Show where I bring the deepest information forward from my contacts, from behind the curtain. I will say this. on July 13th, because President Trump's head was not turned into pink mist, again, I truly believe that was divine intervention. Having taken care of hundreds of trauma victims, I can tell you that was a millimeter away. The leverage tables were turned. I will leave it there. It's all on our website at davejanda.com and the WTF shows. But part of that leverage table being turned, I believe, was directly attributable from Event 1, Butler, PA, to Event 2, July 21st, 2024. The Party of Democracy, who had given Basement Joe 14 million votes, which is a joke in and of itself, in the primary, threw him under the bus. And installed the puppet Harris, the puppet of the deep state, of the syndicate, as was Biden. But he just wasn't quite articulate enough to pull things closer where they could work their mojo, right? For the event last week. Couldn't even make it close, which is why they had to change. So the second event, Magnificent Seven event, was the throwing under the bus of Joe Biden and the installation on the top of the ticket of Kamala Harris. Number 3 in the Magnificent Seven of the election cycle of 2024 was what I call Kamalenberg. Remember, we had the Hindenburg, and May 6th of 1937, the Hindenburg exploded into flames in New Jersey. Well, she exploded into flames on October 16th, 2024, when she was interviewed by never-Trumper, globalist shill, Brett Baier, who just asked her straightforward questions and never pushed her hard. But she couldn't even handle that. And many people, again, more awakening, right out here. I mean, this is our test dose of laboratory rats out here in the People's Republic of Ann. They were telling me, Dave, wow, I never quite realized how bad she was thinking on her feet. Never should those two terms be used closely, thinking along with Harris, right? Or Walz, or 99% of these other goofballs with an R&D after their name in Washington, D.C. But the number 3 on the hit parade was that disaster of the political equivalent disaster called Kamalenberg, where she exploded in rage when she was asked about her policies and that have adversely affected every American over the past 4 years. I mean, at one point, she refused to apologize to the families of the victims of crime, including murder and rape, at the hands of illegal aliens that she and Biden allowed into our country. Remember, she was border czar. Like it or not, she was. She was put in charge of the border. Where over 425,000 illegals with convicted criminal records had come across allowed to come across the border. 13,000 rapists, 13,000 murderers, 15,000 rapists that we're aware of. And she refused to apologize. She had no answers on any of the questions, to the point where she showed up 15 minutes late for that interview, but and they closed the interview down 20 minutes before they were supposed to, as 4 of her handlers were waving their arms at Brett Baier, we gotta stop. Number 3 on the hit parade. That interview. Kamala Bree. And you could point out a number of interviews, but that was the one that, based on the feedback I got from out here, from the hardcores, oh, maybe we should take that Harris Wall sign down out of our front yard in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. Number 4 on the hit parade was globalist cult middle level puppet, higher than Joe, higher than Kamala, but still at that middle level, Barack Obama. He decided to leave his 3 mansions in the beginning of October to demand that black men vote for the very woman who's made their lives unaffordable. And that message was reinforced by his main squeeze, Michelle, at a later date in October, and by Joy Reid on MSNBC, who said that black male voters in particular are walking away from the political left because they're turning fascist. Huh? Joy Reid claims black male Trump voters are a part of a global fascist phenomenon. Did they really think that was going to have all these folks that were saying, I can't vote for her, or that Walls, or some of these other cats? I don't like being played. I don't like being treated like my ancestors were treated when they first came to this country or were brought to this country. No, that didn't go over well. It surely didn't go over well. And part of that message was, and I'm pretty close to Detroit, where we're at. People's Republic of Ann Arbor, like 20 miles, 25 miles. At one point toward the end of October, Harris brought this rapper in, Lizzo. She flew in on her private jet. Wait a minute, what about that green agenda and carbon footprints? And now, maybe for us, but not for them. Came in and she said, as opposed to what Trump and Vance had been saying throughout Make America Great Again, it was Make America Detroit. That was part of this. And then went on the shaming thing of minorities should be voting for these, Harris Walls and all this kind of stuff. I mean, this is all part of number 4 on the hit parade. Well, make America Detroit? Mad. Make America Detroit. That is mad. I mean, there's some nice parts of Detroit and some nice parts that have been renovated and rejuvenated. But let me tell you, take a ride on through the Cass Corridor. It's not like going to the beach, folks. 30% of Detroit lives below the poverty line. 8.8. This is being kind. 8.8% unemployment. 3.5 to 4 times the national average. One of the highest crime rates in the country. But Harris and her posse are telling you, let's make America Detroit. I can tell you, again, the feedback from those out here on Moscow on the Huron River were like, you know what? Detroit is nice to go to dinner or, whatever, maybe. But, or a ball game or something, hockey game but make America Detroit? Yeah. That was number 4. Number 5 of the Magnificent 7, the return of Donald Trump to Butler, PA. that was an incredible event. Elon Musk joined them, but not just because Elon Musk joined them. Here's a guy who came within 1 millimeter of had his head being turned into pink mist. Now, the natural reaction of most 99% of people would be, wherever that happened, I ain't going back. I just from the post-traumatic stress of it. And you can understand that. That's why it's one of the Magnificent Seven events. Because really what he was doing, he was putting a finger in the chest of every one of those individuals from the deep state that was involved in that set up, stand down operation. It was a message that might have been subliminal, but still had even more of a less subliminal side to it, where Joe and Jane Public, like us, said, you know what? If he's willing to do that, you know what? I'm willing to go the extra mile. And Trump is always one for sending a message, not just through words, but through actions such as this, but also some hints of what's coming. At the end of the Republican National Convention, there was an opera singer who sang a song, Nessun Dorma. Trump's a big opera guy. And it's also played at the end of the movie Sum of All Fears, which was derived off of Tom Clancy's works. And that song is playing at the end of the movie Sum of All Fears, when all of the deep state traitors are offed, who tried to assassinate a president of the United States and start a nuclear war with Russia. That just is not a little accident or coincidence that Trump played that song again at the end of his presentation, the follow-up to J13 in Butler, PA. Number 5 on the list. Number 6 was an eye-opening event in New York City. A charity dinner called the Al Smith Dinner, put on by the Catholic Charities, the Archdiocese of New York, Cardinal Dolan. Why was it eye-opening? On a number of fronts. One, Kamala did not show in person to support a charity event that benefits unwed moms, orphans, children, and families in need. No, she didn't show up. She sent some video that an 80 to 90%, as I understand it, of people in that room, and there were many hundreds in that charity, in that event, New York City, the hobnobbers, 80 to 90% were globalists. When that video of Kamala that she brought in, that was kind of like based on a Saturday Night Live twisty thing, they were booing. They were booing. Then Trump got up and gave a really funny address. That was a big event because it opened the eyes of many people. And even the master of ceremonies, who was a comedian from actually Saturday Night Live, Jim Gaffigan, said the following, quote, "The Democrats have been telling us Trump's reelection is a threat to democracy. In fact, they were so concerned of this threat, they staged a coup, ousted their democratically elected incumbent, Joe Biden, and installed Kamala Harris," end quote. It was a very significant event. Not just for the people there, but millions of people saw, at a minimum, highlights of it or heard highlights on radio shows. And it was an eye-opening event. Right out there again. And we channel Helen Keller on this. Helen Keller did not have sight, but she had an incredible vision of society and people and the world around her, even though she was blinded as it relates to her sight. What this event showed was that Harris, has visual sight, but she has a limited vision of the world in our country. And that vision is very distorted and very myopic, short-sighted. The event also showed that Trump does have visual sight, but he has a vision of the future, a future that has diminished inflation, no wars, less conflict, and a safe and secure border, increasing the safety of every American. Number 6 on the hit parade. And number 7 on the hit parade was the Mick event, which Mick triggered the deep state. Don at the French fryer at McDonald's. It was a brilliant move. It was one of the most brilliant political moves in my lifetime, and I'm old. Because he was pointing out, again, Harris's lies about her background. And it was confirmed through McDonald's that they had no records of her working at a McDonald's franchise. And the people who owned franchises where she lived around have no record of her ever working there. So it was a brilliant political move on many fronts, but it was Don, the common guy. Don working the French fryer, Don working the takeout window, talking to people, schmoozing, being Don. It was brilliant. Brilliant. Now, whenever you have a brilliant move against the deep state, there's retribution. So the retribution was that particular McDonald's, the managers and the employees were having to get escorted out to their cars after they got done working shifts days in it afterwards because it McTriggered the McCrazies, the McPsychopaths that were Harris Wall's supportees. Yeah, they had to get protection. And then, of course, McDonald's got tagged by the CDC. Why? The sales were going through the roof at McDonald's around the country on that Sunday that it happened, and Monday. And then all of a sudden on Tuesday, the CDC announces, well, they're having there are 49 people that have had problems. Okay, that was from a month before. They knew that a month before, and the problem was already solved because they had identified weeks before that it came from slivered onions that were on quarter pounders that came from a particular distributor in Colorado, and it had been shut down weeks before. But because the CDC, an arm of this cult, if the last 5 years didn't tell you that, well, here you go again. They put out an announcement, well, we're looking at the beef patties. They had already looked at the beef patties. Stop it. And it wasn't. Turns out it wasn't. It came about a week after that. Oh, well, But there's always retribution when you have a big move toward freedom. And that McDonald's event was a huge move. It was on many different planes. Number 7 of the magnificent events. And it exposed the retribution, not only against those employees, which was ludicrous, truly a fascist move, totalitarian move, but that's who these folks are. But also, on a national level, McDonald's will be fine. They're back selling quarter pounders without the slivered onions. And, you know, that distributor is going to have some explaining to do about how this happened. I mean, the question is, we also saw this with the listeria breakout with delicatessen meats, right? Deli meats. Rumor has it that some of these companies bring in illegals that are untested. And I said this from the very beginning about the border. This is a problem because they are bringing with them pathologic diseases that are not that are not minimal. But when it all comes down to it, what this election came down to was an issue of abandonment. Abandonment. You see, when you boil it all down to what Trump and Vance and the whole MAGA movement was about, Make America Great Again, is about to stop abandoning freedom, liberty, and individual empowerment. That was the essence of it. And the Harris, Walz, Biden, Obama, Clinton campaign was about abandonment. And look at their track record. About abandonment of freedom, of liberty, of truth. Abandonment. Whether it was their abandonment in Afghanistan of over 1,000 American citizens there with their botched pullout, if that's what you want to call it, and thousands of Afghans who had helped with America's presence in Afghanistan for years, left them behind, abandoned them, or the abandonment of the people of East Palestine, Ohio. And then making the problem worse by when they did get involved in doing their controlled burn, which was nothing more than releasing and exacerbating toxins into the soil, the water, and the air. Or their abandonment of the people of Lahaina in Maui, Hawaii. Their abandonment of all those in the southeast United States with the hurricanes. Their abandonment throughout their entire, and I can't say it, this operation, abandonment of the truth related to that. Or the origins. Or of early treatment. Or the truth related to their horrible protocols. Their abandonment of the border that led to unnecessary deaths and injuries to many Americans, that put every community in harm's way because of their abandonment of the border, their abandonment of the economy, that led to the rancid stagflation every one of us is experiencing today. When historians look back at the 2024 election, I think the Reader's Digest version, the Cliff Notes version, is going to be, it was election about freedom versus abandonment. I've gone on record as saying that what happened going into the entire election cycle through Election Day was going to be the easy part. And the hard part is where we are right now and where we're going until Inauguration Day, sometimes known as Installation Day, like in 2020. In January 20th, 2025. And then from January 20, 2025, moving forward. See, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, deep state, globalist cult, is alive and well. And their ultimate goal, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is to create chaos, because out of chaos, they get more power control and more financial resources. They have pre-positioned themselves for the financial takedown of our country and the world. So there's a couple things you can do. One, all those elected officials at the national, federal, state, and local levels, tell me your whys to what's going on and what are they going to do? What are they doing? And what are they going to do? Because they are going to be held accountable as the system comes down. What are they doing about it? What are they doing to minimize the impact? And number two, protect yourself and your family. And we talked about that earlier. Financial insurance policies of physical gold and physical silver. Storable food, water filtration systems, a means of protecting yourself. And networking with your immediate neighbors of who's going to bring what to the party as the system is pushed further by the state, by the deep state. I thank you for joining me today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today. We are available 24/7 at davejanda.com. Stop on by.